Hello, focused learners. Welcome to this Masterclass Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled to be your tutor today. Listen, if you've been staring at Chapter 9 of your management textbook and feeling, just a little overwhelmed by all the theory, take a deep breath. Seriously, management theory can sometimes feel incredibly abstract. It's almost like you're trying to memorize this incredibly dry, lifeless dictionary of corporate jargon. But today we are going to completely flip the script. We're going to make these complex managerial decision-making concepts super accessible, totally practical, and honestly, we're going to have a lot of fun with it. So grab your digital highlighters, get comfortable, and let's conquer this material together. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our syllabus, basically our game plan for today's session. We'll start with 1. Foundations, then 2. Conditions of failure, 3. Decision models, 4. Application steps, 5. Styles and techniques, and wrap up with 6. Exam prep. Let's keep it moving. Section 1. Foundations of decision-making. All right, so before we can even think about solving massive corporate problems or, diagnosing organizational crises, we absolutely have to build a rock-solid foundation of the basic terminology. We need to distinguish between two terms that we all usually just use interchangeably in everyday life: decision and decision-making. Now, as your meticulous tutor, I really need to point out that a decision is simply the final destination. That's it. It is merely a choice made from available alternatives, the final dot on the map. But decision-making? Oh, that is the entire journey. That's the road trip. It includes gathering intelligence, talking to stakeholders, weighing all the risks, and actively seeking out opportunities. You cannot just magically jump straight to the choice. You have to respect the rigorous, sometimes messy process of actually getting there. So building on that, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the types of decisions managers actually face on this journey. They generally fall into two main buckets. First, we have programmed decisions. I want you to think of a major logistics company routing its daily delivery trucks. These are recurring problems. The company already has robust software algorithms, they have years of historical data, and standard operating procedures are completely locked in. Managers can simply apply these existing rules. It's almost automatic. But on the flip side, we have non-programmed decisions. Imagine that exact same logistics company deciding to, say, enter a brand new, highly competitive international market. This is a totally unique situation. Entering a foreign market means dealing with unknown local regulations, completely unpredictable consumer behavior, and supply chain mysteries that haven't even been mapped out yet. It's poorly defined, it is entirely unstructured, and it carries incredibly important consequences for the survival of the entire business. There is literally no rulebook to rely on here. You are flying blind. Section 2. Conditions of failure. Now that we know what decisions actually are, let's build some intrigue and talk about the risks involved. Because the absolute truth of the matter is, managers do not have a crystal ball. They just don't. And every choice carries a completely different weight of potential failure. Think about a spectrum, moving slowly from the safest bet all the way to maximum danger. On the safest side, we have certainty. This is the absolute dream scenario where all information is fully available to you, meaning the possibility of failure is practically zero. You know exactly what's going to happen. But moving along the spectrum, we hit risk. Under conditions of risk, future outcomes are subject to chance. Think of it like flipping a coin, where you at least know the odds are 50-50, right? Then things get hazier. We enter uncertainty. This depends heavily on the amount and value of the information you can actually get your hands on. It's kind of like flipping a coin in the pitch dark, where you can't even see if it landed on heads or tails. Finally, at the very end of the spectrum, we hit the danger zone, ambiguity. The risk of failure here is exceptionally terrifically high. Let's actually lean into the drama of that ambiguity for a second. Ambiguity leads to what organizational scientists actually call wicked decisions. And honestly, they are exactly what they sound like. These are a manager's ultimate boss battle. In a wicked decision, there is deep, deep conflict over the goals themselves. Circumstances are constantly changing, the information is completely fuzzy, and the links between cause and effect are entirely unclear. Take, for example, a company's CEO having to decide between executing massive layoffs during a severe economic downturn or risking total bankruptcy for the entire firm. It's an agonizing situation. It takes an immense emotional and structural toll on everyone involved. Honestly, in these situations, there is often no single right answer. You are simply trying to find the least wrong path forward while navigating complete, utter chaos. Section 3. 3 decision-making models. So, a great question to ask here is, how do managers actually face down these wicked decisions? or even just their everyday problems? Well, they use different lenses or models to tackle them. Let's look at the 3 primary models. First up is the classical model. Now, this is the ideal, completely rational world. It assumes managers operate purely on rational economic assumptions to accomplish precisely formulated goals. In this model, the decision maker strives for conditions of high certainty. They gather absolutely complete information, they evaluate all criteria using pure, flawless logic, and they select the alternative that offers the maximum organizational benefit. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's perfect. And it is almost never how the real world actually works. I mean, think about it. Humans simply do not have the infinite time, the limitless computing power, or the perfect foresight required to gather absolutely complete information on every single choice. So let's step out of the textbook utopia and see how this builds into reality. Welcome to the administrative model. This is a descriptive approach of how managers actually make decisions in the wild. It heavily recognizes serious human and environmental limitations. The 2 biggest buzzwords you absolutely need to know here are bounded rationality and satisficing. Bounded rationality is a cognitive psychology concept. It literally means that human brains have strict mental limits on how logical we can actually be. We get tired, we get overwhelmed, and that leads to satisficing. Let's say a startup manager wanted to research 50 different software vendors, but they are under a really tight 2-hour deadline. Their brain is exhausted, they literally cannot process any more spreadsheets due to bounded rationality. So they use satisficing. Instead of finding the mathematically perfect option to maximize benefit, they pick vendor number 3 simply because it checks the basic boxes. It is quote-unquote good enough. I really want to stress this. Satisficing isn't failing, it's not being lazy, it is a vital, necessary survival tactic in fast-paced business environments. Our 3rd lens is the political model. And this one heavily resembles the messy, real corporate environment we all know. Organizations are made up of groups with incredibly diverse interests and conflicting values. Let's picture this. Department heads are sitting in a boardroom arguing over severe company-wide budget cuts. Marketing desperately wants to keep the budget for their flashy new ad campaigns, while research and development insists they need those exact same funds for critical product testing. The information they're working with is ambiguous, and fierce disagreement is completely normal. To get anything done here, a manager must engage in coalition building. That means forming informal alliances, having those offline conversations in the hallway, and using soft power to support a specific goal. Without a solid coalition, powerful groups will simply derail the entire decision-making process through endless negotiation and horse trading. Section 4, the 6 application steps. Okay, I want you to grab your digital notebooks because we are shifting into the highly practical learning by doing phase of our masterclass. It is time to take all this theory and apply the framework to actually solve a problem. Let's do a thought experiment. Imagine you manage a local cafe and you've just noticed a sudden, sharp drop in your afternoon sales. Here is exactly how you use the 6 steps to fix it. Step 1, recognition of requirement. You acknowledge the drop in revenue because you diligently looked at your point of sale software data. You see the problem. Step 2, diagnosis and analysis. Now you need to know why this is happening. You interview a few regular customers, and you literally look out the window to see that a trendy new coffee shop has opened right down the street. Boom, diagnosis complete. Step 3, develop alternatives. What are your feasible options to fight back? Well, you could launch a loyalty program, or you could introduce an expensive new afternoon pastry menu. Step 4, selection of desired alternative. You choose the loyalty program because it has a significantly lower upfront cost, and it can be executed super fast. Step 5, implementation. Listen to me, this is absolutely crucial. This is where most decisions actually fail in the real world. You have to use your managerial abilities to execute the plan by carefully, patiently training your staff on how to use the new punch card system. If they don't do it right, the plan dies here. Finally, step 6, evaluation and feedback. A month later, you look at the data again to see if those afternoon sales actually recovered. Did the plan work? It is a continuous, never-ending loop of improvement. Section 5, personal styles and techniques. Now, while those 6 steps we just went over are universal, every single manager brings their own unique flavor and personality to the table. Let's pivot for a second to the human element of decision-making. Managers generally fall into one of 4 personal decision styles. First, a directive style. This type prefers simple, clear-cut solutions. Picture a manager drawing a straight, bold line on a whiteboard and simply saying, go. Very no-nonsense. Next, we have the analytic manager. They love complex, data-heavy solutions. They're the ones buried behind 3 monitors of Excel data analyzing every cell. Then there's the conceptual manager. They thrive on a broad amount of information, big picture mapping, and creative what-ifs. And finally, the behavioral manager. They have a deep underlying concern for others, prioritizing one-on-one team check-ins and making sure everyone feels heard. I want you to play along right now. Think back to your last really stressful group project. Which of these 4 styles did you naturally default to? It's pretty revealing once you think about it. So beyond personal styles, top-tier managers also employ really innovative techniques to avoid cognitive biases. Because biases can cause disastrous decisions. They use brainstorming, they rely on hard evidence rather than gut feelings, but I'll tell you, my absolute favorite technique is rigorous debate. Specifically, using a devil's advocate. This means you assign someone on your team to intentionally poke holes in a strategy and argue aggressively against it before it ever launches. You do this just to test its strength. Furthermore, exceptional managers know exactly when to bail. They actively avoid what we call escalating commitment, which is also famously known as the sunk cost fallacy. This is that terrible, almost universal human tendency of loss aversion. It's when you keep pouring money into a failing project just because you've already invested heavily in it. Imagine a tech company refusing to kill a failing product line simply because they already spent $5 million developing it. Good managers, they swallow their pride and they cut their losses. Section 6, Exam Prep and Pro Tips. All right, my friends, I am officially putting on my elite tutor hat for this. This final section is strictly dedicated to making sure you secure maximum marks on any upcoming test regarding this material. I want to give you a massive advantage. If you are taking a test on this chapter, you are almost completely guaranteed to see a question that looks exactly like this. How do bounded rationality and satisficing differentiate the administrative model from the classical model? Professors absolutely love this question. They love testing your ability to contrast the pristine, ideal, rational theory against the messy, realistic limitations of actual human managers. So here is your Golden Tutor pro tip to guarantee those full marks. When you sit down to write your essay answer, you must explicitly link the word satisficing to having limited time, limited resources, and bounded human mental capacity. All of that lives in the administrative model. Conversely, you must strictly link the word maximizing to the high-certainty, perfectly logical classical model. You might be wondering, why are graders looking for these exact words? Because it shows them that you deeply, truly understand the massive gap between flawless textbook theory and the gritty reality of human decision-making. Nailing this specific distinction proves you actually grasp the core mechanics of how businesses operate out in the real world. And just like that, you've made it to the very end of our Masterclass Explainer. You are now fully armed with the frameworks to tackle complex organizational problems. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to take out into the real world. When true ambiguity hits, when the data is totally fuzzy, the goals are intensely conflicting, and you are staring down a massive, terrifying, wicked decision, do you rely on your practiced analytical intuition, or do you let panic drive your choices? Take a moment to reflect on your own style. Build those strong coalitions, trust the process, and go make some brilliant decisions. Thanks so much for learning with me today.